Hello and namaste everyone. Welcome to the To Be Free series of episodes that we have been doing for health, happiness and harmony. I know we have been talking quite a bit about health in the previous episodes, and I thought it would be great to talk about happiness in this episode, because we all want happiness. We are all looking for happiness. We are all searching for happiness. We all want happiness. In fact, I myself was seeking happiness, a permanent happiness, many years back, right after university, got into the life job. But then suddenly I started to see myself going through this roller coaster ride. There were days that I used to be happy. There were days that I used to be sad. There were days I used to be excited. There were days I used to feel down. So after watching that pattern for some time, I was seeking for permanent happiness. I was like, where can I find this permanent happiness? No matter what, it shouldn't change. And at that point, I ended up meeting ancient sage Sunita Amma and started the Sukshma meditation program. And within a few sessions, I realized the happiness. And of course, we tend to use a wrong word for that permanent happiness that we want. So let us take a moment to dissect a little bit to understand what is happiness. In fact, there are three types of happiness. Let's call it happiness for now. But actually, there are three experiences that we all go through. But we use that one word happiness for all of these, because either we are not educated well about what is happiness from childhood, nor we have never taken a moment to really go deep under and really understand what exactly is happiness. So the first thing is pleasure. The first type of happiness we generally talk about is actually pleasure. Now this pleasure happens at a physical level. This is at the level of the body. So there are 5 senses that keep giving information from the outside world to us. These 5 senses, of course, we know are touch, the smell, the taste, the hearing, the sight. All these 5 senses are constantly giving information based on the stimulus that we receive from the external environment. And these immediately act upon at a physical level. So some of those experiences give us pleasure. So there is a pleasure when you taste something that you really like a sweet or a cake or whatever, right? Whenever you taste that, it gives you a certain level of pleasure. When you smell something, it gives you certain fragrance stimulation, which leads to a pleasureful experience. So if you look at all of these are experienced at a physical level. Now, if you look at them deeply, these experiences fade off with time. They are not permanent. You go for a nice dinner, you enjoy the dinner, you derive pleasure out of it. After that night of sleep, next day morning, or maybe another day, you'll remember it, you'll talk about it, and then it fades off with time. And we seek after that pleasure more and more. So we go back to the same restaurant, or we go back to that same experience. We try to reignite that experience. And in fact, this pleasure system is one of the reasons people get addicted. They get addicted to food, they get addicted to alcohol, tobacco, smoking, drugs. All of this is because of that pleasure that is derived. And unfortunately, we think that is happiness. And that is the reason we go back to that same pleasure, seeking that pleasure again and again and again. But at the end of the day, we get addicted to those pleasures and we get trapped in that pleasure. Not only drugs and alcohol, my dear friends, the pleasure derived from even obsessive eating, obsessive drinking, obsessive thoughts that give that pleasure, all of these create a vicious circle and we get trapped. And that pleasure never stays at the same level. It goes high and then it always comes back and has a low. So that is the reason people go through this roller coaster ride when seeking pleasure. And this pleasure, as we have just understood, is coming from the sense organs. So that is why in the path of Sukshma meditation or this yogic path, there is so much emphasis on regulation of senses, because these senses can trap us, they allure us, they delude us, they make us feel that is real, they make us fall into the trap, and then to get out of the trap is very difficult. As you know, a lot of people are addicted to all these different things. So now that is pleasure, which is happening at a physical level. Now there is happiness that is derived at a mental level. This is an example: is you hear a good news from someone, you feel happy, right? You feel joyful. That is happening in your mind at a mental level. You hear a sad news, right? That makes you sad. That is happening at your mental level. So the happiness that we experience in our day-to-day lives because of certain news, certain experiences that our mind processes, that leads to happiness. But again, we also know that we feel happy for that moment, and then that happiness fades away with time. You hear about a great news about a family member. It fades off with time. Take your own life. You might have felt very happy when you got your first job, or when you graduated from your high school or from university. That happiness lasts for a bit of time and it fades off after that. So that is not permanent either. And the problem we go through roller coaster ride is we constantly seek for that kick that we get from that happiness. And when we do not get that kick, we go into sadness. Again, happiness is a high and your sadness is a low. So you see how we run after these polarities of pain and pleasure, happiness and sadness, and we keep running between these two. And Sunita Amma always says, we run after pleasure and we run away from pain. We run after happiness and we run away from sadness. And because of this roller coaster ride, we get tired, we get sick, because at the end we know whatever happens at a mental, emotional level impacts our physical level as well. In fact, there is a phenomenal amount of scientific research done on how emotions impact our physical well-being. There is a lab called Ninamna Lab, Center for Emotions, and they have actually studied how a person goes through at a physical level, what they go through when something changes at a mental or an emotional level. And it is incredible to see how it impacts. Even a simple example, when you're happy, your body feels light and joyful and you're jumping and all that. But when you're sad, you feel so heavy and you start to feel sick. You start to not have much appetite or over appetite. To satisfy that gap that we have in that sadness, we indulge in emotional eating. So we go through all these lifestyle challenges, we go through health challenges when we are running after this pain, pleasure, happiness and sadness. Now, there is a third type of happiness. Let's call it happiness for a moment, but it is actually called bliss. This bliss is in ancient Sanskrit language is called Ananda. That state of bliss is not happiness, not sadness, not pleasure, not pain, but it is right here in the center. And this bliss is the very essence of the entire spiritual journey, the yogic journey or the meditation journey or any other spiritual path that you take, whatever culture, religion, ultimately they are all seeking to experience that bliss. And now where is this bliss? That's $1 million question. Now, I'll give you a simple story here. You give a bone to a dog, right? A dog loves chewing on the bone. Now, when the dog starts to chew on the bone, it starts to taste something. And sometimes what happens is when that bone gets, hits the gums and the tooth, there is blood that comes out. and then it starts to lick on that blood and feel that the bone is the one that actually giving the joy or the pleasure. But the dog doesn't realize the pleasure it is deriving is from within its own blood oozing from its mouth. It unfortunately thinks that it is coming from that bone. Now, exactly the same way we humans, our inherent nature is bliss. But when we seek out and when we get these momentary pleasures and momentary happiness, we think that we are deriving that bliss from these external objects, from these sensual pleasures, from these external stimulants, whereas bliss is already there. And this is exactly where in my journey with Sunitama and Sukshma meditation, I was able to experience that state of bliss. I was staying constantly in that state of bliss during the meditation and carrying that bliss into my day-to-day life after the meditation as well. And that state of bliss is beyond these polarities. In fact, ancient wisdom also says that this is a state of non-duality, because there is no duality, there are no polarities. It is beyond happiness and sadness, beyond pain and pleasure, and it is right there within you. In fact, yogic wisdom also gives a beautiful explanation, beautiful analysis for this. They say that we are made up of 5 layers or koshas. This is called pancha koshas in Sanskrit, which means 5 layers or 5 sheaths. Now, what are those 5 layers? The first layer is the physical sheath, which is called annamaya kosha. And how do we feed that physical sheath? Physical is fed with the food, and that's why it's called anna. Anna means food. Annamaya kosha is where that is sustained by your food that is provided to the body. That's a physical sheath. Now, the next layer is called the pranamaya kosha, which is the life force. It is that vibration, that prana is your breath, which is feeding into you and creating this energy system within your physical body. Because without prana, this physical body doesn't exist. Without the life, the physical body is dead. So that is the second layer called pranamaya kosha. And then the third is called manomaya kosha. Mano means mind. That is the layer of the mind, the mind with which we go through emotions, which we go through all these thought processes, is called the mind layer or the manomaya kosha. And then there is the fourth kosha or the layer called vijnanamaya kosha. This is the wisdom, the knowledge, higher knowledge and wisdom. This is again an outcome of the thought process. Of course, the thought process has to be purified and cleansed in the mind. Only then can one experience that vijnanamaya, the wisdom sheath, the wisdom layer. When the cleansing of physical, mental, and the life force, which is the pranic, all these 3 layers happen, then we can start to experience that higher states of knowledge and wisdom, which obviously starts to lead us to the final state or the final layer called anandamaya kosha, which is the sheath or layer of bliss. Now, these are the 5 layers that yogic wisdom says that we are made up of, and it is very clear. It is not some mumbo jumbo. We all know that, as I just explained, every person in this existence in this world goes through these 5 layers, and the ultimate goal is to be able to experience that 5th layer, which is already there. It is already there in everyone, but unfortunately we are most of the time stuck at that annamaya kosha, physical, or at the manomaya kosha, mental layer. And what we are doing today in this world is we are polluting this physical body, we are polluting this mental body, we are polluting it with all kinds of bad lifestyles, improper food, improper diet, improper thoughts, polluting your mind with the vices, Of course, we are stuck and entangled at that physical and mental layer. Obviously, because of that, our prana, which is the life force, that energy is polluted, because of which we are getting sick and fall sick. So we never even reach the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnana is not just simple intellectual analysis of doing things. Vijnana is an enlightened knowledge, enlightened wisdom. It is a knowledge or wisdom coming through the experience of your true self, and that experience is what leads to the experience of bliss or ananda. So my dear friends, please be aware of these three things: pleasure, happiness, and bliss. Bliss is our true nature, and that is why ancient wisdom also says our true nature is Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda. We'll talk about these three in another episode, but remember the word Ananda. Ananda is being in that state of bliss. That state of bliss is inherent, which we can experience anytime we want. It is unfortunately that we have never been trained to experience that. In fact, as we come into this world as little babies, we all come with that state of pure bliss. We all see these little babies being in that nice sleep and in that smile, that subtle smile, which of course we call the Sukshma smile, Mandasmita, is the very nature of our existence. But because we get conditioned over a period of time with these pleasures and happiness and pains and sadness, we forget that. We become ignorant of that. So when we remove that layer of ignorance, automatically the inner layer of bliss is revealed. So please do remember that this state of bliss is the ultimate essence of any journey, self-transformation journey, self-realization journey, or spiritual journey, or whatever you may want to call it. And the state of bliss can lead to perfect wellness as well, and harmony as well. See, health, happiness, and harmony. The right in the middle is that happiness, or what we call bliss. Once you experience bliss, your body comes into that state of equilibrium called homeostasis. In that state of equilibrium, all your cells and tissues and organs are functioning at an optimal level. And then on the other side is the harmony. Once you're in that state of bliss, your relationships become perfectly harmonious, because you are not swayed by this emotional turbulence that happens in most of the relationships, because now you have realized your true self, your being. You know that if somebody else is going through a roller coaster ride of emotions, you know that it is their problem, not your problem, because you know who you really are. You know your true self. Once you know your true self, you will have harmony with every single human being in this world. No exceptions, because you know who you are, because you are always in that state of bliss. You are not swayed by the winds of these dualities. You are always in that state of non-duality. So now let's do a short meditation session to stay in this bliss. Okay? So as always I say, keep that smile. That smile is the very essence of Sukshma. Sukshma is to clean that mental layer. The layer where we think everything is happening, that happiness and sadness, that cleaning has to happen. And that is where Sukshma becomes a very, very powerful tool, powerful meditation form, focusing on that subtle body, on that Sukshma layer. And we start, of course, that with that simple smile. Keep that smile. Pay attention to your breath. Just sit back, relax. Imagine that beautiful waves of the ocean going up and down. While you're experiencing that waves, also connect with all the other elements of nature. The beautiful sunshine, the light, the fire, the water, earth. Feel that soil, that sand, the space, vastness of the sky. You're connecting to all the 5 elements, inside and outside. You're becoming one. As you're going deeper and deeper into your heart, spread that smile. Be conscious of your smile. Open up your heart. Receive that light, beautiful sunshine, energizing every single cell in your body. Letting go of any dualities, judgments, analysis. Be here in this moment, in the now, in the now, in the now. Bliss is in this present moment. Bliss is your very nature. All your attention is on your heart, going deeper and deeper inside. Your physical body is completely rested. You have regulated your life force with your breath. Your mind has become one-pointed, scattered to one-pointed. Your mind is becoming silent. Your inner wisdom is illuminating now. That illumination is covering you, inside you, around you, above you. You are engulfed by that illumination. You are in that bliss, Ananda. You can stay in this however long you want. It's up to you. You can carry this bliss into every aspect of your life. Spread that love into your heart. Bliss starts with self-love, self-compassion, self-gratitude. Because your true self is bliss.